Hello and welcome, Clearly Essential team. This is our monthly webinar and we are recording for January 2017. So it's always exciting having a new year and looking forward to goals and things that we want to accomplish in the coming year. And I am here with my good friend, Lindsay Rapp, and I'm going to let her introduce herself. Hey, Lindsay.
Hello, thank you for having me. I'm excited to talk about this. I think it's great timing for the new year. I have been with doTERRA for just about 4 years. So it'll be 4 years in January. It's kind of hard to believe, but I think my math is right there.
Yes, you're right.
Yeah, I am a gold with doTERRA, and I think that we've got some great tips to share for you today.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I think most of you know, but I'm your diamond leader, and the Clearly Essential team is my business name. So every month we try to bring you some really valuable content. And Lindsay and I had an opportunity back in August 2016 to go through Michael Hyatt's Productivity Summit, and he called it Free to Focus. And that name really drew me in. I was excited about that. So we took some copious notes and we're comparing notes and really felt like this could be consolidated into some information that would benefit all of our teams. And I think, like Lindsay said, this is such a great time of year to be looking at this topic. I wanted to point out before we turn off our videos, I'm wearing my Stay Present shirt, and this really will come up later in the webinar, but I found this on clearance for $4 in a place where it wasn't supposed to be, and it just called out to me as something I've been really working on, is staying present, being in the moment, and devoting time and energy to whatever I'm working on that needs to be done in a certain block of time instead of multitasking or being distracted all the time. And this goes really well with productivity and is a major theme, something I've taken. Now, I will say I don't think either one of us would claim that we have mastered any of these, but we've both learned a lot and we've had a few months to think about it and try to put some of it into practice. And we have some personal experience of trying to increase our own productivity. And so we're going to jump in with this content, but I did want to point out some of the things that Michael Hyatt said were that he wanted us to really imagine a life where we have the freedom to focus, to really be present, and to be spontaneous. And that really attracted me in to listen to all of the speakers and webinars and content that he brought to us during that summit. I think it was 5 days or so worth of different speakers. And he challenged us that we could actually achieve more by doing less. And I was at a place where I was ready to hear that because I wanted to believe that I could actually achieve more and still do less and not be on this hamster wheel of busyness. And I want that for all of our team members. So I will, before we jump into the content too, just say make sure you're doing your personal development to build your belief, and also activities that are going to build your confidence, getting out of your comfort zone, because that goes right along with what we're talking about. And a lack of confidence is going to lead to lower productivity. So as well as putting in tips in place that we're talking about, make sure that you have a goal for your personal development as well. So I'm going to shut off my video because that will help us all to just have a better view of what we're talking about here. If it will let me move. There we go. I'm going to minimize and try to move that. Yeah, move it out of the way so you can see the full screen better. And we're going to start with talking about managing our time. So this for me is kind of a funny topic to be addressing because I will definitely say I'm not the best at time management. However, I have suffered the consequences of being poor at time management, and I have also learned some lessons by trying to improve that. And one of the things that's been a struggle for me is being a procrastinator, and procrastination will really kill productivity. And so that is something that I have been striving to get better at and have been working toward improving. And I have made some strides. I actually saw this through my Facebook memories, my posts from on this day, years ago. It was really funny. Just the last couple of weeks, I saw where 4 years ago, I sent out my Christmas cards on December 29th and said, they've now turned into New Year's cards. And then a few years ago, had gotten a little better where they went out on like the 20th or something. And last year I just didn't send any. I just did a digital card, and there was a reason for that. And I think this goes along with what we're talking about really well, because I just chose that was a different season for me. We were spending time with my parents and we were traveling with them, and that was a rare opportunity. And I didn't want to have the distraction of Christmas cards. And I knew that one year wouldn't make that big of a difference. And I wanted to spend my time differently last year. So I just chose not to do them at all. And then this year I planned ahead. I ordered them Black Friday weekend, and I had them sent out somewhere around the 10th. I think I had most of them sent out by the 10th of December, somewhere between the 10th and 15th. So I can see improvements in this area, but I certainly am not an expert on time management. That's just one example. So kind of a key thought Michael Hyatt talked about was, he said, you can get rid of 80% of your to-do list. And I know everyone is just like, how is that possible? That seems crazy. That seems like such a huge percentage. And the way that you can do that, he talked about, is to eliminate, automate, or delegate, because we can't do it all and do it well. And usually if we choose not to eliminate, automate, or delegate things, there's 3 reasons we choose not to. And it comes down to, we think it will save money. We think that we have to be the one to do it to get it done the right way, or we want the credit. And that comes down to a pride issue, which is a little painful, but it ends up costing more time and more energy in the long run if you don't let it go. And refusing to delegate will leave you depleted with just kind of that life of constant busyness that we want to try to get away from to be more productive. So eliminate, automate, delegate. Let's talk about what that looks like and why we want to do that. You don't want to spend more time managing your to-do list or organizing than on actually getting things done. Really, there's no virtue in managing a to-do list, and lists can create guilt for a lot of people. You need to be winning and not feeling defeated all the time. So yes, to-do lists can really benefit, and if you're managing them well. But it can also be kind of a trap that creates guilt, especially if you're one, like I have been, who puts way too many things on a to-do list than it can actually ever get done in a day, and then feels like you're a failure if you didn't get it done. So we need to create lists that will help us to feel like we have won. And we'll talk more about that as we break down what this looks like. Focus on where you provide the most value. This has been hard for me because I have tried to do a lot of different things that were not my strengths. And if you focus on a smaller number of things that you know you do really well, if you understand your strengths, which we've been talking about, last month's webinar was actually about the Strengths Finder assessment. And I encourage you to watch that if you haven't. But knowing your strengths and working from that place of what your natural strengths are and what adds the most value to others around you will help you get the best possible use of your resources. And it also helps you make the most significant contribution to the world. And it does take a lot of clarity, and it does take courage as well. You're going to have to return to your why you're doing what you're doing and what your true purpose is in order to be able to focus on the things that really contribute the most and where you are in your strength zone. Recognize what's distracting you and come up with a solution to fix it. I'm going to be pretty general on this because no solution works for everyone. You'll have to do some honest self-examination about distractions in your own life. You may have to ask others who know you really well to help if needed, and to help identify what your distractions are. And you also have to be careful not to let your vice be your medicine. So give yourself grace in overcoming distractions and learning to focus and recognize what those things are. And don't use those things that are distractions as a main reward for getting other things done. We'll talk about rewards a little bit more later on as well. A lot of this all feeds into each other, all these different topics Lindsay and I were talking about. There's so much crossover, and that's great. It makes a lot of sense that there would be when you're focusing on productivity. Hope for the future, balanced with an understanding of the present, is the key to productivity. Something that impacted me a lot from the summit was I heard this story about the Stockdale paradox, and that is named after Admiral Jim Stockdale. He was a United States military officer held captive for 8 years during the Vietnam War. And Stockdale was tortured more than 20 times by his captors. He never had much reason to believe he would survive the prison camp he was in. He never had a reason really to believe that someday he would get to see his wife again, but he never lost faith during that whole ordeal. And he said, I never doubted not only that I would get out, but also that I would prevail in the end and turn the experience into the defining event of my life, which in retrospect, I would not trade. And this is where the paradox comes in, because while Stockdale had remarkable faith in what he didn't know, he also noted it was the most optimistic of his prison mates who failed to make it out of there alive. They were the ones who said, we're going to be out by Christmas, and then Christmas would come and Christmas would go. Then they'd say, well, we're going to be out by Easter, and then Easter would come and Easter would go. Then Thanksgiving, then it would be Christmas again, and they ended up dying of broken hearts. So what the optimists failed to do was confront the reality of their situation. They preferred kind of that ostrich approach where they're sticking their head in the sand, hoping for difficulties just to go away. And that self-delusion might have made it easier on them in the short term, but when they were eventually forced to face reality, it became too much and they couldn't handle it. So Stockdale approached adversity with a different kind of mindset. He accepted the reality of the situation. He knew he was basically in hell, but rather than bury his head in the sand, he stepped up and he did everything he could to lift the morale and prolong the lives of his fellow prisoners. He created a tapping code so they could communicate. He developed a system that helped them deal with torture. He sent intelligence information to his wife, hidden in seemingly innocent letters that he wrote. And Jim Collins wrote a book called Good to Great. It is an excellent leadership book. And he wrote about the Stockdale paradox. And he and his team observed something very similar in companies. And they labeled it the Stockdale paradox and described it like this, that you must retain faith that you will prevail in the end, regardless of the difficulties. But at the same time, you must confront the most brutal facts of your current reality, whatever those might be. So the Stockdale paradox carries a really important lesson in personal development. It's about faith and honesty and not doubting that you can achieve your goals no matter how big they are, how many critics you have. And at the same time, you need to take an honest stock of your current situation. So don't lie to yourself because you're maybe afraid of short-term embarrassment or discomfort, because that kind of deception will come back and defeat you in the end. So that hope for the future has to be balanced with an understanding of the present. And then really the most important question here is, what kind of life do I want? I know for me, I did not want to stay on the hamster wheel. I wanted to know where I was going. I wanted to know how to get there. And that means just getting really clear on what you want for the future, and knowing that means I'm going to have to eliminate, automate, or delegate some of the tasks that are keeping me so busy. Okay, so Michael Hyatt also talks a lot about the desire zone versus the drudgery zone. So we're going to look at some of the points around that. Your desire zone is where your passion lies, and it's also where you're the most proficient, where you work the most proficiently and where you enjoy working. And your drudgery zone is those least desirable tasks that kind of zap your energy. So he also wrote a blog, Michael Hyatt did, about this, a blog post that said, the whole 80-20 rule. He said, imagine spending 80% of your time on the projects that drive your business forward instead of just barely keeping it going. That would result in a 300% increase in your ability to focus on the projects and priorities that generate income now and in the future. And what would that do for your revenue? Maybe double, even triple it. What about your personal income? And what if it grew by 50% or more in the coming months? So if you're spending time on kind of big picture, creative, revenue generating work, that might feel like a luxury or sound like a luxury to some people. But that just means you're not reaching your full professional potential. And a lot of this is not just about our businesses or profession. A lot of this will relate to you in many areas of your life, whether you're running a household or have another job, or you are homeschooling your children, or you are running a ministry, or whatever it might be. We want to be the most productive we can in all of those areas. And it doesn't have to be that way where you're focusing a whole lot more on your drudgery zone and not being able to get to your desire zone. And that's what happens with a lot of people. They feel like they're spinning plates and just putting out fires. And we don't want to be living like firefighters, always putting out fires. So what he encouraged us to do is write down your list for the day and mark each item either desire or drudgery, and then pick out the 3 most important tasks for the day and try to focus on income generating activities whenever possible, because it can also be easy to procrastinate in this area and pick out the things like organizing your filing cabinet. And we know in our business, we need to focus on income generating activities. And then write the next action that needs to happen beside each of those 3 tasks, just the next action. That just makes it less overwhelming. And then start asking yourself, how can I eliminate, automate, or delegate the drudgery items in the very near future? Because you can't just get rid of them and ignore them right now. But if you start noticing a pattern of these things are in my drudgery zone, these are not the things I most enjoy doing in my life or in my business, is there a way I could automate that? Is there a way I could delegate it to someone else? Or is it really even necessary to move my business forward? Could I just eliminate that altogether? So I don't know, Lindsay, if you had anything you want to add about time management or prioritizing how you do your list. Lindsay's actually going to talk to us about priorities next. Did you want to say anything about any of these time management topics?
No, I think what you've said so far is just a good framework for where we're going to continue.
Awesome. Okay. So that will be on managing our priorities. I'm going to turn it over to Lindsay to talk to us some about this.
Okay, so as Crystal said before, this is definitely nothing here that we've perfected, but we are learning as we go. And so I think when I think about priorities, I think a lot about, which of those spinning plates we need to keep spinning and which we need to let go of. We also have another phrase of what's on the beam, and we get this from Jen Hatmaker, but we can't do everything well. And so we have to look at the things that have to get done, whether or not, and then again, the things that are in our strength zone. So if we move on, the key thought is if you don't prioritize your life, someone else will. And this kind of goes back to not letting the urgent take over the important. And so we need to be able to set our priorities and not look to others, not just address other people's concerns first. Look at what our priorities are and stay within that framework as we go about our personal lives, our business lives. All things do not have the same importance. When we know our priorities, then we also know our limitations. We cannot do or be all things without consequences. Something else I learned recently, the word priority came into the English language in the 1400s. It didn't become plural until the 19th century. So for 500 years, the word priority just referred to one thing. Can we really have multiple prior things? Sometimes when we're getting ready to start a task, we'll say, okay, before we do this, we need to do this one thing. But we don't have multiples of those priorities. So I just thought that was an interesting way to look at it, that we really need to zero in on the priority.
Mm-hmm.
So when we're prioritizing our actions, we got a really nice foundation here for looking at more disciplines of execution. So number 1 is focus on the wildly important. So this is going to be your big picture, but what is most important within that. So this will help us simplify. Simplifying your business will take work. People vastly underestimate the amount of focus it takes to complete a task. So get out of the whirlwind in order to focus deeply. Step 2 is act on a lead measure. Good lead measures are productive and influenceable or controllable. So we have to focus on what we can control, and that is what makes it winnable. There's always going to be things outside of our control, and spending time spinning our wheels on those things that we can't control anyways don't move us forward. So we really have to zero in on the things that make us productive and the things that we can control. Step 3 is create a compelling scoreboard. And this, again, is going to look different for different people. But we are geared to plan toward an end goal. So if that's making a vision board, if that's setting out your goals for 2017, you want to look at those main goals and be able to move forward based on those. And the fourth thing is, of course, very key, and that is create a cadence of accountability. So this would be like our weekly mentor calls, and keeping it to 20 minutes is really, really wise. So 20-minute weekly meetings so that you can stay accountable to yourself and to someone else. I think that we've all felt this, that when we know we're checking in with our mentors, that we want to be prepared. We want them, to know that we've been working hard, and it's both a pride thing and also just letting them know that we're working, to reach some common goals as well. So accountability is definitely really important. Everything doesn't have to be your best work ever. Go for the quick win. Come up with 2 solutions to a problem: the slow solution and the quick solution. It doesn't have to be perfect the first time. It's better to get something done than try and perfect it and run out of time, never get it presented to whoever you're planning to present it to. Good enough is good enough. I like this quote from Voltaire, which is, "Don't let perfect be the enemy of good." We know that we're never going to be perfect. And perfection is what drives procrastination for a lot of us. So we have to shrug off that need for things to be perfect and just get it done. Focus on the small number of things that you do very well. Again, this goes back to knowing what your strengths are, and I think it goes along with doing income generating activities in your business, and knowing what you need to delegate. So no one actually multitasks really well. Multitasking is actually single tasking with lots of just checks. People who can concentrate on one task at a time and see it through are more productive or successful. So I found this for myself when I am doing something like working on a presentation. So if I'm creating a new presentation, I'm on my MacBook, and if I'm connected to Wi-Fi, then I'm getting instant messages, I'm getting emails. All those things are happening while I'm trying to focus on this one main task. And I never really thought about trying to do it differently. We want to be available. We want to be able to answer questions that arise during the day, if they're from usage or if they're from a team member who needs some business advice. We want to be able to answer their questions quickly. The problem is when you do that and you let yourself get interrupted, then your attention, it takes you longer to get back on task to the main thing that you were doing. I'm working on a presentation. And I don't give those people that are intermittently that I'm letting interrupt me, I don't give them my full attention either. So I'm not giving them the best answer that I could if I were using the time I set aside to answer questions. So I've learned to turn off Wi-Fi when I'm working on a presentation, and then I have that singular focus. Again, let's see, start cutting some commitments if they constantly stop you from working efficiently and focusing well. Again, eliminate or delegate or automate. Commit to that process. Sometimes we just need to ask ourselves, why am I doing this? And, signing up for things that are outside of my main goals. I do it because I'm used to saying yes when it's a volunteer opportunity. And sometimes I just have to stop myself and say, why did I say yes to this? Why am I doing this? Okay. Moving on. Prioritize your health. So when Crystal and I were listening to this Free to Focus Summit, there were some people in there that I have to admit I enjoyed listening to more than others. And it was because they were saying things that already went along with my preconceived notion of what a healthy life looks like. One of them talked about getting plenty of sleep. One of them talked about getting daily exercise. And maybe there wasn't, I don't remember if there was someone that specifically talked about nutrition, but I think, most
kind
of us
woven in with
yeah.
a couple of the speakers. Yeah.
Well, and that just kind of, that always goes in with any oil class that we're teaching. We're talking about diet and supplement, good nutrition. So of course these things were easy to hear because I feel like I'm at least, 60 to 75% good at following through on these topics. But we really do have to practice what we preach. Exercise, sleep, and nutrition equals good brain health. It's not being lazy to get 8 hours of sleep at night. It's not being lazy to take a 20-minute nap during the day. It is giving our brains and bodies time to rest and reset. These are gifts we give to ourselves and our loved ones. We can't teach others about health if we aren't taking care of ourselves. Living in a constant state of distraction will make you feel edgy, irritable, unfulfilled, and incapable. Disappointment, guilt, and a sense of failure will follow. I know that there have been many days where I feel exhausted, and it's not a physical exhaustion. It's not because of lack of sleep. It's not because I've done a lot of physical activity. It's because my brain is on overload. And there are a lot of ways. Jotting down notes, for one thing, is something that really helps me not feel like my brain is constantly on overload. Don't blame others or your business if you aren't taking care of your health. Take ownership and make the time. And from personal experience, I want to say that nothing is more heartbreaking than to see someone who started with doTERRA to improve their health turn around and sacrifice their health in order to build a business. Burnout happens, and it's not pretty, and people don't always recover from it. We have to walk the walk when we talk about self-care. We can't fake it. By all means, we should be open and honest about our struggles, but at the end of the day, we have to be able to say we performed at least 1% better than we did yesterday. Something else with priorities, and this ties a little bit into procrastination, which we'll probably talk about a little bit more. Remember the 1-minute rule. If you have a task that can be done in less than 1 minute, do it without delay. Get rid of the little things so you can focus on the big things. I'm this way with clutter. If I'm going to sit down to work, I can't have, crumbs from the breakfast meal still on the table. I'm going to wipe off the table so that I have, clear space and I'm not distracted by that sort of things. So outer order contributes to inner calm. And sometimes we need to do a mundane task to be able to work out things mentally. And one thing that one of the people I was listening to said, she heard from a woman who said, I cleaned out my fridge. Now I know I need to switch careers. So sometimes doing those crazy tasks can be procrastination, but sometimes we do just need a mundane task to be able to work things out in our brain. So I think you have to see the balance there again and know, ask yourself, am I procrastinating? Do I just need a little bit of outer order to make it calm inside?
Mm-hmm. Very true. Okay, that's awesome. Well, I'm going to talk about managing technology now. And this, again, is not something that I have perfected. I'm not going to be telling you a whole bunch of tools that are the best for our business and what to use, because honestly, that's going to be different for each person as well. The goal for your business and the size of your team and your goals for the short term, what your team needs, what you need, what your customers need, what works best for you personally. That's all going to depend on each person. And different tools will work differently and be better for certain people. But an important point that really stuck out to me, and a key thought from Michael Hyatt in the Productivity Summit, was technology can make you more efficient, but won't actually save time. And I think everyone is looking for those tools that will make their lives easier. There are many of those, but we do need to be aware that technology probably won't save you much time, at least right away. It's going to take more time to learn, but it can increase your efficiency, your productivity over time. Some tools will save you time in the long run. And then by the time that happens, there's going to be new tools. So we just kind of have to accept that technology changes quickly. And there are a lot of things that can benefit our businesses and our lives and make us more efficient, and make us feel less crazy. But they don't always really save us a lot of time, especially in the short term. So let's look at some ways that we can make sure we're managing our technology, and some tips that we gleaned from these speakers about this. The first one is to turn off notifications and eliminate what they call the just checks. And Lindsay referenced that already, that it actually leaves residue in your mind when you are just checking your email and just checking Facebook, while you're trying to actually maybe create a presentation or do a specific task. So that distraction costs you usually an extra 20 to 30 minutes, and it leaves what they call attention residue in your mind. Some of those who have really studied the psychology of what technology is doing to our society, they call it that attention residue, and it makes it harder to get back on track and refocus. And it can also be an escape. Technology can certainly be an escape for many of us from the harder work that we need to be doing. So we might procrastinate a harder task and say, oh, well, I just need to check my email first. And really that could wait. So what Lindsay said about turning off your Wi-Fi is great. I was working on creating this PowerPoint over the last couple of days. And when I was doing that, I did the same thing. I turned off everything that could distract me. I kept my phone away from me, and I blocked out hours of time to sit down and go through my notes, go through the notes that Lindsay had shared with me that she had sent already, and start making this without any distractions. And it was so much more effective, and I was able to get it done more quickly, and then able to give my full attention to answering those emails or whatever might have come in while I was focusing on creating the presentation. So this was kind of a painful statement one of the speakers made. It's easier to face your phone than it is to face your life. So again, it can be an escape from harder work that we need to be doing, whether with our businesses or some other aspect of our lives. And being constantly in conversation is really toxic to true productivity. To be able to actually focus and get to the nitty-gritty hard work of what we need to be doing, we often need to just turn off our phones, turn off our Wi-Fi, and face our lives or face our harder tasks. And this is kind of like some great advice I had gotten was, if you're on a date with your spouse, turn off your phone. Or if you have some family time, a game night or something planned, put your phone in a drawer. Nothing is that urgent that you have to, unless you are, an ER doctor or nurse and you're on call, of course. But talking about our doTERRA businesses, there's other aspects in life when we can't do that, but we can with our businesses. Now, don't just look for any benefit. When you're looking at different tools and considering which ones might be the most beneficial or which ones you really need to have, look for a maximum benefit. So something is not worth your time and energy just because it might have some benefit. You need to really be picky, be strategic when it comes to which tools will benefit you. You don't need to use every social media tool out there to be successful. And they're always changing, and there are always new ones. So that will be tempting. But know where your audience is. Where are the most people you need to talk to at on social media. If you're looking at social media specifically, where are the people who want the product and the service you have to offer? Know where they are and speak to them there. You can be very productive on social media if you choose to focus. So it is worth investing in the right tools. Sometimes it's an investment of time and money, but they really do synchronize your team, and they really are worth the investment it takes to learn and even to pay for some of them. I wouldn't say you have to pay an exorbitant amount. There's no reason to spend lots and lots of money unless you are creating a huge brand and most of your business is through a blog, for example. Then that's going to be different from someone who has most of their business in a local community where they're doing live classes. The tools that benefit you and are worth investing in will be different. So apps can be really addictive. And a couple of the speakers talked about this, that they're as addictive as drugs in many situations. They stimulate the brain the same way that drugs can. And so we need to make sure we're not just checking our phones out of an addiction. And one of the speakers actually talked about how he realized most everything he needed to do on his phone was to be able to make phone calls and then to be able to have a map for driving and like one or two other things that he knew he needed on his phone to be able to text, those kind of things. But everything else that he had on his phone was not necessary. And it was causing him to be like an addict, constantly checking his phone. And others around him were noticing that he wasn't actually engaging when they went out to dinner or had family time, or, when he was supposed to be off for the weekend. He was constantly looking and checking his apps on his phone. So he ended up deleting all of the apps except for 4 or 5 very necessary ones. Everything else he could do on his computer or other device, and set aside time for, this is my time to check Facebook, or this is my time to check email. I don't have to be that accessible to people in the profession that he was in. And it eliminated a lot of clutter in his mind. And the interesting thing was it took weeks for him to stop checking his phone, even though there was nothing to check on it. There were no notifications coming through. There were no apps dinging or any of that. It was really just phone calls and texts. But he found himself picking it up and looking at it constantly. And that's when he realized this is so true, that it can be like a drug. And we have to be very careful not to let that happen. And in the end, pen and paper can be as effective as any app. Again, there are great benefits with technology, but sometimes we have to admit that, I may need to just go back and pen and paper. That worked really well for me. My day planner where I wrote things out worked better for me than this calendar, for example. And that may not be true for you. So again, knowing what works for you, maybe trying some things out. Maybe there's a free trial you could use instead of paying for a whole year's worth or subscribing right away. Things like that to make you more efficient. Figure out what that is for you. Figure out the system. And it needs to make taking action easier, or it is a waste of time and energy. So like Lindsay said, if there's something that can be done in a minute, get it done, take care of it right away. Sometimes with technology, it does make it easier to get things done very quickly and take care of it and then move on. But if it's actually taking a lot longer and it's not getting you better results, then it is a waste of time and energy. And we need to be really careful about that. And one of the speakers was Cal Newport, and he's in Silicon Valley. He's one of these people who loves to study the psychology behind what technology has done to our society. He's brilliant. He's invented things, and he wrote this book called Deep Work, and it's all about focus and how we're losing the ability to focus because of all the technology and the distractions around us. And I pulled out this one quote, and I went back and listened to this section over and over so that I could write it down word for word, because I thought it was pretty profound. He said, "I think the future of knowledge work is going to be one in which deep work is a lot more prevalent, and this culture of constant connectivity is going to be looked back on with the same sort of disdain that the modern factory worker looks back at the very early days of the Industrial Revolution and says, I can't believe we were actually trying to build things that way." So just think about that. This constant connectivity that we have is really leaving some residue in our brains and is actually making things harder and take longer. And we need to get back to where we can truly focus. And again, some apps and some technology is very beneficial for making us more efficient. but sometimes we have to admit that it's actually doing the opposite and know our own limitations. Lindsay, did you want to say anything about technology specifically?
Yeah, well, that quote from Cal Newport reminds me of something that I put in the sleep presentation from Ariana Huffington when she said that we have lost, I believe this was maybe from 2014, it was in a recent year, we lost like 11 days of productivity, but we weren't working any less. So again, it goes back to that, we think we're multitasking, but we're not, we're not accomplishing, we're not finishing anything.
Yeah.
And this idea of, deep work and focusing just on one thing at a time. It was Sean Stevenson that said it's easier to face your phone than it is to face your life. And that was just like a smack in the face. There are so many times where I might be having a conversation with someone, a texting conversation. And while I'm waiting for them to respond, then what do? I hop on Facebook and then I get distracted there. And so this is another reason that I love the do not disturb feature, because sometimes I will, when I'm waiting for people to respond to me, then instead of focusing on the important task, I will do other minor tasks in the meantime because because we're having this conversation. Whereas if I put my phone on do not disturb and say, okay, then mentally I'm telling myself, I'm not waiting for a response from them right now anyways. I can focus on, the main goal for the day. Something else I heard recently with regards to Facebook and social media, I think it applies pretty much to any social media. And the question was, does it make us, is it a good thing because it makes us feel more connected? Or is it a bad thing because it can make us feel more lonely or sad? We know that in most cases, we put our best selves out on social media. And so if we're feeling down about ourselves, seeing other people's best selves can be very defeating. So what it comes down to is, first of all, that relationships are the secret to happiness. So, some of those relationships might not be real relationships that we have with people on our social media feeds. But that social media amplifies human nature. So increased social media can go either way with increasing or decreasing our happiness, and I feel that if I'm already kind of in a fall mood, then when I get on social media, the things that irritate me are going to be magnified. Yes. And I realize I don't need to be here. Put the phone down and walk away.
Yeah. Well, I think it's really true too with parenting. Thing to be careful of is, we see teenagers who have more relationships online than they do in real life, and they're losing social skills, and certainly not all, and not just teenagers, adults and younger children too. But as a parent, I'm trying to be cognizant of how much I allow, my children to be on their devices for that reason, as I want them to get out and have real friendships and have real play dates, and I want them to interact with real people. And then I think I need to make sure of the same thing for myself. So, absolutely true. All right. So Lindsay's going to talk to us now about boundaries.
Yeah. So we can move on to the main idea there. I mentioned it already, but don't let the urgent trump the important. People tend to choose urgency over importance, and that can be a trap. What I try to always remind myself is to move towards the people who are moving towards me, because I can get outside of my boundaries if I'm not doing that. And don't waste energy on the negative. And Crystal's going to talk more about energy towards the end. But that is so true. So when we talk about boundaries, I think that boundaries tie in a lot to habits. So establishing good habits for yourself, and also establishing margins around your life. And so when we talk about margins, that can be really small things and that can be really big things. I tend to be what time do I have to be there? Okay, so this is the time that I have to leave. Oh, I have time to do one more thing before I head out the door. And if that one more thing involved my phone, it might have ended up taking twice as long as it should have because I got distracted. So it's really important to set specific boundaries and really focus on when you can get the most done. So only you know your daily schedule. If you have if you have another job, if you homeschool, if your children are in school, if your children are toddlers and they nap, you know, for one, with the schedule of the rest of your day when you have time to focus on your business. And then also as people, you know, some of us are night owls, some of us are early birds. So it is good to just know yourself, and hopefully those can align a little bit as to when you can get the most done. Schedule blocks of time when you cannot be interrupted. So this is where we're going to have real clear boundaries, and we're going to set those boundaries around the times when we can focus and not be interrupted. And Crystal and I have already kind of given you ideas of how to set those boundaries. Put space between you and a request so you can better process it. Even if I'm able to, you know, read an email right away, it doesn't mean that I need to respond right away. Each request does not exist in a vacuum. Don't say yes to all good ideas. The most successful leaders have learned to say no to things that don't line up with their ultimate goals and life purpose. Trying to do everything results in more stress and lack of fulfillment. Never jeopardize your current commitments to say yes to something new. Learn the art of the graceful no. And I would say that the graceful no does not always have to have a long explanation. You can say something to the effect of, I need to be respectful of the time that I've already committed to someone, and just leave it at that. Be helpful to others in ways that you can be useful in the shortest amount of time possible. So sometimes your no might come with a suggestion of someone else or another tool that can be used for that person. Let's see. I think that sometimes, well, yes, you have to honor the things that you've already said yes to. I think that's a big thing. Leave margin in your life for both. Leave margin in your life, both in time and money. So I have learned that I rather get somewhere 5 minutes early than take 5 minutes to do one more task before leaving my house. It makes me more peaceful. It makes me feel less rushed. It makes me more understanding and more patient with other people if I build in those margins of time for myself.
Mm-hmm. I think if it's something on your phone, then you can tell yourself, well, if I go ahead and leave now and I actually have 10 extra minutes when I get there, I can sit in the parking lot and do that thing on my phone, or, you know, just
exactly.
Do I have to be here at my house to do that, or can I go ahead and leave now? and maybe we'll see if I have the time. And Michael Hyatt told a story about margin that, you know, he builds in, and he actually plans longer than it should take to do certain tasks, so that he has that if there's surprises that come up. If a, you know, grandchild wants to come over after school and just show him something new or spend some time with him, that he can say, yes, I can do that. You know, that's why he wants to have margin, is for his family, and not to always be so busy that he doesn't have any extra time, that he can just say, yeah, I can drop that and be there for you. So he builds in extra space in time and money in his life purposely so that when surprises come up, he's available 9 times out of 10. And I really loved the picture of living like that.
Right. Yes. And he didn't always do that. It took him years to
Right.
figure that out.
Yep. He had to learn the hard way.
And obviously for money purposes, we for sure want to, spend. It's real simple. Spend less than you make.
Yep.
It's simple. It's not easy, but it's simple. Margin or boredom should be as important to us as eating and sleeping well. It does go back to healthy eating and healthy sleeping. If you are so busy throughout the day that all of a sudden you look at the clock and you think, oh, if I fall asleep right now, I might get 6 hours of sleep. We need that margin to prepare our bodies and our minds for sleep. Obviously, same thing as, eating well. You have to plan it. You have to buy it. You have to make it. So make time to focus on your own needs. And I think it goes back to some of that we were just talking about: eating well, sleeping well, self-care. You can't go big or win big if you don't make trade-offs. With more success comes more responsibility. And if you don't make decisions about what to cut, you may realize too late that you couldn't do it all. The root word of decide means to cut or to kill. As your business grows, you'll need to decide what to cut so you can make room for your greater purpose. For example, when Steve Jobs came back to Apple, he cut 330 products down to 10, opening up resources so that Apple could perfect those 10 before adding more products again.
Yeah,
I don't think that anyone can argue with, with Steve Jobs' process.
That's right. Yeah, and I thought that was an important factor that they talked about, that success can actually be a catalyst for failure, because sometimes people get successful doing things one way and then they're not willing to change or adapt to, oh, my business has grown. Now I might need to do things a different way, or some things might have to be cut. We don't need to do certain things we were doing before at all in order to move forward, but they're not willing to make those hard decisions. And they keep trying to just add more or do things the same way. And then their success ends up being a catalyst for their failure. And certainly we don't want that.
Right. We need to be able to adapt. A couple other just items I like to remind myself: cultural norms glorify the busy, and we feel punished for saying no a lot of times, and we shouldn't. It's okay not to follow those cultural norms. It's okay to be different. Creating good habits is key. Sometimes we have to remind ourselves to just do it. If you do something all the time, it's okay if you have an off day. If we're talking about working out, eating well, what have you, if you do it every single day and you have one bad day, that's not a big deal. If you save up that important work and you only do it once a few times a month, then you feel more pressure to do it really well on those occasions. So that's where good, healthy habits can play into it. You want to watch out for stumbling blocks. So when we talked about rewarding ourselves, and that the reward should feed into establishing the good habit. Don't use the just this once loophole, whether it's with a diet, or it won't matter if I don't do it this one day. It won't matter if I don't contact people just this once, because it goes back to building that good habit. Does one coin make you rich? No, but if you add one coin to a pile of coins every single day, eventually that one more coin is going to make you rich. So same thing with exercising, doing all of those daily contacting type habits, day after day after day, is going to lead to success.
Yep. And all of that actually goes really right into the next topic. So unless you had something else to add.
I had something that when you talked about procrastination earlier, the word crass, the root word there, is Latin for tomorrow. And that procrastination creates an anxiety cycle of the procrastination of like, oh, I haven't started it yet. There's some reason that I don't want to start it. And it just feeds itself. So just starting the thing is comforting, and it can just be a small step. It can just be putting it on the calendar. It can be just looking up that person's phone number. And sometimes it does help to pair it with something that you don't want to do. So maybe you pour yourself, your favorite cup of coffee, or you put on your favorite outfit and then do that thing that you don't want to do. To just kind of, help you move along, to help you put one foot in front of the other.
Yeah. I love all the word history stuff. I liked that they included some of that. Just like priority was not meant to be plural, and the root of decide means to cut, sort of cut something out. And then with crass too, thinking of that with procrastination. So yeah, you talked a lot about some things that go right into managing your energy. So a lot of this will be repeat. And I love that they all feed into each other this way, because it's all related to having a balanced and productive life. And when I think of managing energy, I do think of habits. And I know, for example, that when I take my LLV every day, I have more energy. And if I miss one day, then it's not usually a big deal. Although by afternoon, I do start to feel like I'm dragging, like, oh, I forgot to take my LLV this morning. So I don't let that happen very often, because I see the consequence, but it's not affecting my overall health to have missed one day usually. But if I were to miss 2 days or 3 days, I would start to see my energy and metabolism and different things starting to change. And there's just a point when you can't make up for it. I can't just on day 4 go, oh, I missed LLV for 4 days. I'll just take 4 days worth at once. My body can't even use that much. It's just going to eliminate it. And that the opportunity to have made that difference has passed. So that's what I think of with managing energy. And a key thought around that: our daily habits influence our emotions and our productivity. And so this does go all back into how these are connected with focus, energy, habits. They're all interconnected and they all work together. So we need to look at our energy along with our habits. And managing energy is about knowing what makes you feel fulfilled. So I would just challenge you to ask yourself, are you living life or is it living you? Time, energy, willpower, and discipline are all limited resources. We wake up in the morning, we have a limited amount of time, energy, willpower, and discipline. The ability to make decisions and the ability to stay on task, the amount of energy and the amount of time we have are all limited resources. And we tend to just think of time as being the limited resource, but all of those are, even the more abstract ones. So we don't want to run out of any of those before the end of our day. We don't want to run out of our energy by 11 o'clock in the morning. We don't want to run out of our discipline or our ability to make good decisions by 2 o'clock in the afternoon. We need to decide in advance how we're going to manage that energy and discipline for the whole day. And so don't let your phone decide for you moment by moment how you're going to manage your energy. That is not going to help you feel fulfilled or accomplished or to get anything done. And unfortunately, going back to technology, that is how oftentimes we make our decisions, is instead of actually making a decision, we let our phones decide based on what is urgent, and we let that trump what's important. So that is a habit that we can change. And an important aspect too of managing our energy is going to be avoiding negativity. So if that means avoiding direct contact with a negative person whenever possible in your life, then do that, make that happen. If you absolutely have to be around negative people, maybe for your full-time job or other areas of life, family members, that you can't avoid, really concentrate and focus and maybe even make a list of the ways you enjoy those people. And that can help drive out some of your own negative feelings about them. Sometimes we kind of grumble and complain about the negative aspects about a person that we don't enjoy being around. And we need to remember that negative feelings actually show us where we need to change. So if it's how we change the way we spend time with them or how we focus on the better, more positive aspects about them, then that's showing us maybe where we need to change and adapt. But if you can avoid negativity, and even in your own thoughts, sometimes that's the hardest place to avoid negativity, is in your own mind. And I've talked before about how I overcame that and how I'm still working to overcome it. I think that's a daily habit that we develop, and it's a process and it takes time. But it was from Jack Canfield, his suggestion of putting a rubber band on your wrist and snapping it every time that you have a negative thought or say something negative. I think it actually started with when you say something negative comes out of your mouth. And, maybe not trying this with kids because you don't want to actually hurt them, but when they're whining or something, having an actual consequence of some type. And really it does something to the brain when it is a physical consequence. So I just started doing that. And within just a few days, I started realizing that it was before the words came out of my mouth. When I started to formulate a negative thought, my brain told me, don't go there because it's going to hurt. And then I started noticing it going back even more to where once I had a negative emotion rising up, I'd realize I don't want to go there because that's going to create a negative thought, and that's going to create negative words coming out of my mouth, and that's going to affect my entire day. So avoiding negativity is a really important aspect of managing your energy. Also, what I mentioned at the very beginning, focusing on the present, staying present, living in the moment, eliminating distractions, all of those things are going to allow you to have true productive freedom. And habits are like the invisible architecture of our days. So it's the structure of our days, and our days, create our lives. So every moment creates the days we're living, and then those days create our weeks. Those weeks create our months, and those months and years, go on to create our lives. And creating good habits will actually change our lives. And it starts with the decision and the discipline to do that, and to going back to eliminating when needed. Create new habits that suit you, and then take action immediately. So habits that suit someone else that maybe you read about on their blog or in their book, they may not suit you. Like Lindsay said, some of us are night owls and some of us are early birds, and we need to find what suits us. We need to know our strengths, and we need to put new habits that we've decided this is definitely something I need to do, put it into place, take action immediately. Then if you are wanting to have a reward for creating a new habit and maybe sticking with it a certain number of days, don't give yourself a reward that does not reinforce the habit. So you actually need to make new habits convenient and bad habits inconvenient. And don't give yourself a reward that's going to feed this thing in the back of your mind that says, actually, this new habit isn't the most desirable. So for example, if you decide I'm going to eat healthy, I'm going to eat clean, or I'm not going to eat processed food or sugar or something like that, and you decide, if I can do that for a week, then I'm going to have chocolate cake, or something that's actually the opposite of what your good habit is trying to create. That's not to say you can't ever have chocolate cake again. Like Lindsay said, if you have a misstep or you just make a decision, you know what, I've been really good for a long time, I think I'm going to allow myself to have this right now. That's fine. But if you're creating a reward, maybe it's, if I can, really stick with this for a whole month, then my reward is going to be taking a paleo cooking class that I saw advertised. I'm going to spend the money and invest the time and energy on that. Or maybe it's, I'm going to sign up for a yoga class because I've been wanting to also do that, and those habits go really well together. Or maybe it's having the home delivery service. Like, if I can prove to myself that I will stay at home and I will cook and not eat out as much, and I will do some better habits, cooking from scratch and not having processed food, then I'm going to allow myself to invest in that program where I pay a fee a month and they deliver food to my door with the recipes so that I can have 5 healthy meals a week. But first I need to prove to myself that I can actually stick with eating healthy. And so things like that make your new habits more convenient. So figure out how that's going to be more convenient than the bad habits, and structure that, and then create rewards around the good habit that actually feed the good habit and not do the opposite.
That was such a light bulb moment for me.
Yeah, and that's the point. I hadn't put it up on the screen yet. I forgot. So make rewards that take you deeper into the habit. Yeah, we don't do that, right? We usually
right.
Reward that's like, then I finally can do that bad thing again once I've done the good thing long enough.
Yes. Well, like with a cleanse. Oh, I didn't eat XYZ for so long. I can't wait to eat it again. Well,
Mhm.
no, that's not the
Like
point.
sugar, right? Exactly. No, you've taught yourself a new habit. Don't ruin it.
Hmm.
It's counterproductive. And it also does mess with your head a little bit, where you start to feel like this good habit is actually depriving me. And it's not.
Right.
That good
You
habit is not
resent you
eating.
resent the new good
Yeah.
habit.
That good habit is making you healthier, giving you more energy. Not having sugar is so good for your brain and your body. And you want to continue to feed that. So, yeah, I love that was a good revelation. And then something else that Gretchen Rubin, who talked a lot about habits, she said was have a weekly power hour. So her weekly power hour is when she takes care of all the little things she's been putting off. So again, they might be things that just take a couple of minutes, but you put it off and put it off all week. So every week having a 1 hour time period where you can address those things, because unfinished projects create open loops, and that will also lead to disappointment and guilt. And we want to, again, eradicate negativity. Anything that creates disappointment and guilt, we either want to cut it out, so eliminate it, automate it, or delegate it, or just take care of it. Some things we can't just take off of our plate. We have to get those things done, but we can get them done quickly and efficiently, take care of them either right away, or you save them up for that power hour and just get it done, so we're not facing that disappointment and guilt going into a new week, like I still haven't taken care of that one thing. And just a word too about clutter. Lindsay already mentioned this, but clearing some clutter can definitely create happiness. But you can also create a trap where you use clearing clutter as a replacement therapy for actually doing important work. So telling yourself, well, yeah, I do want to get to my follow-up list from that vendor event, but I need to clean up my office and organize and file things. And then, oh, I should probably go ahead and clean up my bedroom and reorganize my closet too, because that's just going to help me feel happier. Clearing clutter just makes me feel so happy. And then it's another day and you still haven't followed up with those people, and your window of time is closing when follow up is most effective. So don't use that as a form of procrastinating to clear out the clutter. Watch for balance in that area.
Absolutely.
And I wanted to end with some thoughts on busyness. So, in our culture, we put a lot of value on being busy. And I loved what Cal Newport said when he was talking about this, where, so many times when you ask someone, how are you doing? The answer is,
Hmm.
oh, I'm so busy. And
Hmm.
he said he treats that like you have the flu. He's like, oh, I'm so sorry. I hope you get over that soon. That's really
Yes.
terrible. I love
Yes.
that. And he's a very successful person that, and people look at me and think I must be really busy, and they'll ask, can I have a quick call with you? I know you're so busy. And I kind of giggle at that now, because I am so much less busy in my daily life than I was at silver or gold, or a couple years ago. And we kind of wear busyness as a badge of honor in our culture. But my
Hmm.
goal has not been to become diamond so I could be busier. My goal has been to get here so I could spend more time with my family, which I've been doing for the last 18 months, traveling the country in an RV. So don't buy into finding value and identity in being busy. And Michael Hyatt said, being busy is not a reason to feel significant. Get your significance from the impact that you're making. The first things to suffer when you are in this busyness cycle are your relationships and your health. And we've talked a lot about that. These are the things that really matter. These are the things we do not want to let deteriorate. Relationships and health should actually come before business as much as possible. So, the opportunities we have in life, they may change, but there are always opportunities out there. Don't buy into a scarcity mindset either that says, if I don't take advantage of this one opportunity and say yes to this thing, I may never have it again, or I may never have an opportunity like that again. When you're looking at what you need to say yes to and what you need to say no to so that you can stay in line with your ultimate purpose and goals, just know that there's more where that came from. Don't tell yourself this might be my last good opportunity. Tell yourself, I need to say no to this right now, but I'll be able to say yes to it in a different season in life. And there's always more where that came from. That is the opposite of scarcity mentality, is the mentality of there's more where that came from. And Michael Hyatt talks a lot about that. And I'm really appreciative for what I've learned from him in that area, because your health and your relationships are harder to get back than opportunities are. You can have it all, but maybe not all at once. maybe not this week or this season or this year. So you need to figure out what matters in your life, and don't just buy into this busyness culture, because you deserve to be free to focus. And that was the whole point of the Free to Focus Summit, was you really deserve to allow yourself to create the margin and do the things we've talked about in this presentation, so that you have freedom to actually be able to focus and make things happen in your life. So Lindsay, do you want to add anything about busyness?
No, I think that was really good. It was so good the way he said that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm so sorry you have that. I hope you get over that soon.
Yes, absolutely. And I think of that
One,
every time I hear people say that now.
my closing thought is from Shailene Johnson, she's a fitness instructor and then also direct marketing kind of guru. And one of the things that she said is, if you do what is easy, your life will be hard. If you do what is hard, your life will be easy.
Mm. Yeah.
And I think that's just a good reminder to, however you look at it, eat the biggest frog first,
Mm-hmm.
Do the hard thing. And, that's how you reach your goals. That's how you get to the destination, is by doing the hard thing.
Yeah. And there's actually great satisfaction in doing the hard things. We are wired as human beings to take great satisfaction over taking on a really difficult challenge and task and accomplishing it. So don't shy away from those things. Look at it as an opportunity to grow, and know that the feeling of satisfaction and reaching your goal is going to be so much better and bigger than any feelings of discomfort along the way. We really learn from those times when things are hard and uncomfortable, but it grows us into better people who are able to take on bigger challenges. And there's so much satisfaction in that, what Cal Newport called the deep work, the deep focus, and the getting into that zone where you can accomplish the most and get the most done for your life. So that's our encouragement to all of you, and to ourselves as well. We're still learning in this process, and thank you for taking time to learn along with us and glean from what we have learned. We look forward to your feedback on this. And obviously this is for a monthly webinar, but it's going to be available for months and years to come. So please share it with others that can benefit. And we look forward to hearing how it helps you to make some changes in your life and in your business. Thank you, Lindsay.
Thank you.